How awesome is this place? Some of you will know that I enjoy walking. No doubt some of you living as we do in this beautiful downland setting will enjoy walking too. But our sort of walking is different. We can plan it. The days have gone when we could rely on an ordnance survey map packed into our rucksack or into a large pocket on our trousers. Now we can have an app which will tell us exactly where we are. It will tell us about how steep we need to go up and to go down. We can plan a circuit so that we end up in the same place, all being well, that we started. And we can choose the length of our walks. It was very different, for obvious reasons, in Saxon times. No specialist walking shots in those days, and walking was far from being a recreational activity. Walking had a purpose. It was a means to an end. Historically, many people didn't travel very far. Cuthman, if we can take the story handed down to us at face value, was different. He set out with a map, without a timetable, without any clear idea where he was going, and he couldn't travel lightly. His father died, and when Cuthman and his mother ran out of money and she became disabled, he made a wooden bed with a wheel at the front and laid her upon it, pushing it before him. With the help of a rope from his shoulders, he went eastwards, vowing never to rest until the elder rope broke, and there he would build a church. He went on his way, supporting himself and his mother only by begging. As I say, this is the account that has been handed on to us in a version codified in the 17th century and recorded in a French compilation of inspiring stories about the saints known as Acta Sanctorum in 1658. A story probably first written down in Norman times at Fécamp, the French monastery in Normandy, who sent masons to build and priests to run this church. The legend of Cuthman, as we call it on our website, isn't history as such, but it is unique, unlike some of the more preposterous stories that confuse Dunstan and Cuthman and folklore, explaining, for example, how Devil's Dyke was improbably created. The legend is hagiography, which means that the intention is that we can learn from it. And it's not impossible that some of the essentials of the fundamental story are true. But this isn't the place to discuss historical questions. Rather, as we celebrate St. Cuthman today, 1 week after the actual feast, we can reflect upon what this story might still tell us, to reflect on how it might be helpful. The three things that seem to be historically certain, however, relate to this town, this building, and to the original dedication of this building. Steyning, as I'm sure you know, was originally a busy port, and this church was built next to it. As a seaside church, the church has long been dedicated to St. Andrew, the fisherman, probably from the days of the Saxon foundation. But the church, and indeed the port itself, were also known by the name of Cuthman. Cuthman's church, Cuthman's port. The dual dedication to Cuthman as well as Andrew came much more recently, approaching 20 years ago in 2007. It's most unusual for a parish church to have a historical connection with a founder whose name we know, and to have a founding story, or you might want to call it a founding myth. How a church came to be here on exactly or more or less the same site, and why this became a local centre for the spread of Christianity in a journey that started probably somewhere in Chichester Harbour, somewhere near Botham or Chidham, and not far from our original diocesan see of Selsey, at the very tip of the Manhood Peninsula. And the building of the first Saxon and wooden church is a significant part of the story that has been handed down. Eventually he came to Steyning, where the rope broke and the bed fell. His mother was not harmed. People rarely came there then. There was little noise or traffic. The inhabitants were very few. It was a sheltered place at the foot of a steep sloping down, then overgrown with thorns and trees, now transformed into a fertile and fruitful farmland, fittingly enclosed by the streams of two springs descending from the downs. First, Cuthman built a hut for his mother. Having done that, he started to build his church. One day, he found that the main wooden beam was useless. A pilgrim from foreign parts came up and said, "Why are you all lamenting?" The pilgrim miraculously solved the problem, and Cuthman fell at his feet, saying, "Show me, Lord, who you are." "I am he," the stranger said, "in whose name you build this temple. But you will be a sharer of perpetual memory and glory in it." And at once, the stranger vanished. There's an ambiguity in the story. We don't know, as some suppose, whether the stranger was Christ, the carpenter, very probably, or possibly Andrew himself. And when it's not dark, if you look at the depiction in the Christopher Wall window over that way, you'll see St. Andrew very clearly, someone resembling a fisherman. It's good to have a founding myth and to know that the much later and long-lasting Norman building here, on or near that original site, can still be the centre of our community and the place where the Christian version of God, the God of love, has been continually worshipped. But what about other, more modern and less historically or architecturally interesting or appealing churches? Are they of less value? People often say nowadays that the church isn't the building, it's the people. And you can argue that our New Testament lesson this evening reflects that, telling us that we are citizens with the saints and also members of the household of God, built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the cornerstone, a living church. In European languages, however, as you may know, there are two words for church. In most countries, the word they use is based on Latin ecclesia, an assembly called out to gather. But in some language, in Scottish and German and English, the word is different, kirk or church. What does that mean? Well, literally, the Lord's. The Lord's, apostrophe S, somewhere belonging to God, and definitely a building, a sacred place, set apart for divine worship. And in any long-established village or ancient settlement, the church, or its site at least, is often the oldest building, if you like, the town, the village or the settlement's primary place. And that's not true only of Christian England or applicable only to Christianity. People, when they came together, found sacred places, hilltops, standing stones, trees, and much of the Old Testament, the oldest stories, relate to such sacred places. One of those traditions familiar to us and heard again tonight is that of Jacob, soon to be renamed Israel, set out in the 28th chapter of the book of Genesis. How Jacob slept and had a dream and saw heaven opened and a staircase or ladder connecting earth and heaven, bringing earth and heaven together with angels ascending and descending. And what did he call that place? Beth-El. Beth means house. El means God. The house of God. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. All of us need dwelling places. Even the Son of Man, who has nowhere particular to lay his head. It's touching, isn't it, how the annals record how Cuthman built a hut or some kind of shelter for his mother before he dwelt a dwelling place for God. A place where his God, the God of love, might be worshipped. He built it in a stony place, or the place of a particular stone, maybe a sacred stone. Steyning, as I hope you know, means place of the stone, or stony place, or even stony people. And the legend, as we've heard, describes the place he found as overgrown and desolate, without many current inhabitants, a place waiting to be found and cultivated, settled and civilized and nourished by daily and weekly human habitation, by people who would tell and listen to stories from each other, who would have descendants, children and grandchildren. He found a place ready to be a community. And at its heart, he built a place of worship, a place where we worship the God of love. And so as we give thanks for Cuthman and reflect upon his story, not just today, but in coming days, and as we approach the season of discipline and Lent and Reformation, as we also remember Jacob and the angels and the awesomeness of the place he called Beth-El, let us remember not just their resting places, but their journeys, how they were made in uncertainty and amidst risk, but in hope. If you have any difficulty recalling the twists and turns of Jacob's own story, one incidentally that the church has been reading a morning prayer recently, and you don't want to look it up in the middle chapters of the books of Genesis, there's a handy summary, as you might expect, in Wikipedia. Meanwhile, let's remember our own journeys as we remember their journeys, made in uncertainty and in hope. And as we recall our own need for resting places, let's also remember our own lives, where we started, how we got here, and as Lent approaches, where God might be prompting us to wander next without mats, and sometimes with little more than a moral compass. And let us travel, never alone, but always with each other and under God. And as we travel, let us remember the prayer attributed to Cuthman in words he used before he built the first house of God in this place. Father Almighty, you have brought my wanderings to an end. Now enable me to begin this work For who am I, Lord, that I should build a house to name? If I rely on myself, it will be of no avail. But it is you who will assist me. You have given me the desire to be a builder. Make up for my lack of skill and bring the work of building this holy house to its completion. Amen.